Millionaire refused every nanny for his disabled son until she arrived and his heart melted like butter. Before we continue, comment from where you are enjoying the story. Noah's laugh drifted through the hallway like a forgotten melody. Maxwell Reed stopped, his hand tightening around his phone. That sound, he hadn't heard it since the accident that took his wife and left his son's body broken 14 months ago. He moved toward the therapy room, expensive shoes silent against the polished floor. Through the doorway, he saw his son reaching out from his wheelchair, actually reaching out, to the woman kneeling beside him. She wore simple clothes, nothing special, but Noah looked at her with bright eyes that Maxwell hadn't seen in forever. The woman turned, meeting his gaze without flinching or the usual nervous smile he got from staff. Something tightened in Maxwell's chest. Fear, maybe, or hope. Both felt dangerous. "You're fired," he said quietly, the words coming out before he could stop them. Noah's smile vanished like a light switched off. "I don't think that's what you mean to say," the woman replied, her voice steady. She stood up, smoothing her simple navy dress. "I'm Sarah Collins. I just started today." Maxwell stared at her, this woman who dared to contradict him in his own home. "I know exactly who you are. The agency sent your file yesterday. And yes, I meant what I said." Noah made a small sound, his hand still reaching out toward Sarah. His wheelchair, custom-built and worth more than what most people earned in a year, gleamed under the careful lighting. "Your son was showing me how he uses his communication tablet," Sarah said, ignoring Maxwell's dismissal. "He's quite skilled with it." Maxwell stepped into the room, drawn by the pull of his son's distress. "He has the best speech therapists in the country." "And yet, this is the first time he's laughed in months," Sarah said. Her eyes, a clear shade of brown, held his without wavering. Not challenging, just stating a fact that hung in the air between them. The truth of it made Maxwell's jaw clench. 6 nannies had come and gone in the past 4 months. None had lasted more than 2 weeks. None had made Noah laugh. "What did you do?" he asked, his voice rougher than he intended. Sarah smiled, not at him, but at Noah. "Nothing special. We were looking at pictures of dogs. Noah liked the spotted one with the funny ears." Noah tapped his tablet. A robotic voice spoke. "Dalmatian puppy." Maxwell's heart squeezed. Such a small thing, his son communicating, showing interest. It shouldn't feel like a miracle. "I see," was all he could manage. "Mr. Reed," Sarah said, "I understand you're protective of Noah. That's good, but firing me 15 minutes after I arrived doesn't seem like the best approach." There it was again, that directness without aggression, stating truths he couldn't easily dismiss. Maxwell looked at Noah, who was watching them both with unusual alertness. "Fine," Maxwell said. "You can stay until the end of the day. We'll see how it goes." Sarah nodded once. "Thank you. Would you like to join us? Noah was about to show me his favorite book." The invitation surprised him. Most staff treated him like a bomb that might explode at any moment, which, to be fair, had often been accurate. He checked his watch, a reflex more than a necessity. His calendar was managed down to the minute by his assistant. "I have calls," he said. Noah's face fell slightly. "But perhaps for a few minutes," Maxwell added, the words feeling foreign in his mouth. He sat in the armchair near Noah's wheelchair, feeling strangely like a visitor in this space rather than the man who owned the entire building. Sarah sat cross-legged on the floor, placing herself at Noah's eye level rather than above him. "Which book should we start with?" she asked Noah. Noah tapped his tablet again. "Space book." Maxwell watched as Sarah reached for the astronomy book on the shelf. It had been Laura's, his wife's, a coffee table book filled with Hubble telescope images. Noah had shown no interest in it before the accident. "Your mom liked stars, too?" Sarah asked gently. Noah nodded, his movements slight but definite. Maxwell felt his throat tighten. They rarely spoke of Laura. The doctors had advised against avoiding the subject, but every mention felt like pressing on a bruise that wouldn't heal. Sarah opened the book on Noah's lap tray. My dad taught me all the constellations when I was little. We used to camp in our backyard just to look at the stars. As she spoke, Maxwell noticed things about her he had missed at first. The careful way she positioned the book so Noah could see without straining, how she waited patiently when he took time to respond, the genuine interest in her voice when she asked him questions. She wasn't beautiful in the conventional way of the women who usually populated Maxwell's world. Her clothes were department store quality, her brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. But there was something in her presence, a calm certainty, an authenticity that seemed rare and valuable. For 30 minutes, Maxwell sat and listened as Sarah and Noah explored the galaxy together. He watched his son's face light up with interest, saw his fingers move more confidently across his tablet. Small things, huge things. His phone buzzed. Reality intruded. "I need to take this," he said, standing. Sarah nodded, her attention already back on Noah and the nebula they were discussing. In the hallway, Maxwell pressed his back against the wall and closed his eyes for a moment before answering the call. His head of security's voice came through, crisp and professional. "Sir, the background check on Sarah Collins came back. There are some inconsistencies we should discuss." Maxwell opened his eyes, looking back through the doorway where Sarah was pointing out something in the book to his smiling son. "I'll be in my office in 5 minutes," he said. "Bring everything you've found." He ended the call, watching them for another moment. This woman who had somehow reached his son when no one else could. This woman who might not be who she claimed to be. Maxwell sat behind his desk, looking at the file his security chief Gareth had placed in front of him. The office, like everything in the penthouse, was designed to intimidate. All dark wood and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. "Her credentials check out," Gareth said. "Education, certifications for special needs care, references from 3 families. But there's a gap." "What kind of gap?" Maxwell asked, flipping through the pages. 2 years where she seems to disappear. No employment records, no social media, minimal digital footprint. And then this. Gareth pointed to a newspaper clipping. Sarah Collins was listed as next of kin for a Thomas Collins. Car accident, 2 years ago. Maxwell stared at the small print. Her husband? Brother. She was his legal guardian. He had cerebral palsy. Something shifted in Maxwell's perception. He died? Gareth nodded. After 3 weeks in intensive care. She stayed by his side the whole time, according to the hospital records we found. Maxwell leaned back in his chair, letting this information settle. Not dishonesty, then. A wound, one that mirrored his own in uncomfortable ways. "There's one more thing," Gareth said. "She donated all of the insurance money to a foundation for spinal cord research, the same foundation you contribute to." Outside the window, clouds moved across the skyline, shadows flowing over glass towers. Maxwell thought of Sarah sitting on the floor with Noah, her patience, her understanding of how to work with him. "Keep the file active," Maxwell said finally, "but no need for additional surveillance." When Gareth left, Maxwell remained at his desk, unable to focus on the contracts waiting for his signature. After 15 minutes, he walked back to the therapy room. The door was closed. He heard Sarah's voice, then Noah's tablet responding. He pushed the door open without knocking. Sarah sat in a chair now, reading aloud from a book while Noah followed along. They both looked up. "How's it going?" Maxwell asked, trying to sound casual. "We're making progress," Sarah said. "Noah showed me his physical therapy equipment. I have some ideas that might help with his fine motor control." Noah tapped his tablet. Sarah's brother had a chair like mine. Maxwell met Sarah's eyes. A flash of something, pain, recognition, passed between them. "Yes," she said quietly. "Tommy used a similar model." "Used?" Maxwell asked, though he already knew. Sarah's face remained composed, but her hands tightened slightly on the book. "He passed away 2 years ago." Noah looked between them, sensing the tension. He tapped his tablet again. "I'm hungry." The moment broke. Sarah stood up, smoothing her dress in that same careful gesture Maxwell had noticed earlier. "It's almost lunchtime," she said. "The kitchen sent up a menu earlier. Noah chose grilled cheese." Maxwell checked his watch. "I have a meeting downtown. I'll be back by dinner." Noah's face fell slightly, a small shift that Maxwell might have missed before today. It hit him like a physical blow. "Unless," he found himself saying, "you'd both like to join me for lunch before I go." The surprise on Noah's face made the sudden change in plans worth it. Sarah simply nodded, as if she'd expected nothing less. The three of them ate at the dining table, something that hadn't happened since before the accident. Maxwell watched as Sarah cut Noah's sandwich into manageable pieces, noticed how she positioned his adaptive cup within easy reach. "How long did you care for your brother?" Maxwell asked. Sarah glanced up. "All my life. Our parents died when I was 18 and Tommy was 16. I became his guardian." "That must have been difficult." "It was just life," she said simply. "Tommy was the easy part. The insurance companies, medical bureaucracy, those were the battles." Maxwell nodded. Despite his wealth and connections, he'd fought similar battles for Noah. Money removed some obstacles but created others. Experimental treatments, specialists with God complexes, consultants who saw his son as a challenge rather than a person. "And now you take care of other people's children," he said. Sarah met his gaze directly. "I help families navigate difficult situations. There's a difference." "And is that why you chose this position? To help us navigate our situation?" Noah was watching them, following the conversation with unusual intensity. "I chose this position because Noah's case matched my experience," Sarah said, "and because I believed I could make a difference. Even knowing my reputation. I assume the agency warned you." A small smile touched her lips. "They mentioned you were particular about care standards." "That's diplomatic." "I've dealt with worse than demanding parents, Mr. Reed." "Maxwell," he corrected, surprising himself. Noah tapped his tablet. "Dads scared people will leave." The blunt assessment from his 8-year-old son left Maxwell speechless. Sarah didn't rush to fill the silence or dismiss Noah's observation. "That's understandable," she said finally. "When we care about people, we worry about losing them." Maxwell stood abruptly. "I should prepare for my meeting." He escaped to his office, Noah's words following him. Was that what the boy thought? That his revolving door of caregivers was about fear rather than standards? Maxwell had always told himself he was protecting his son from incompetence, from people who couldn't properly care for his special needs. When he emerged an hour later, briefcase in hand, he found Sarah in the kitchen. Noah was having his afternoon rest, a necessity after his morning therapy. "I've left detailed notes about our schedule today," she said. "Would you like me to review them before you go?" "No need," Maxwell said. He hesitated, then added, "Will you be back tomorrow?" "Do you want me to come back?" Sarah asked, her directness catching him off guard again. Maxwell thought of Noah's laugh, the way he'd reached out, how he'd engaged with the books, small victories that felt monumental. "Yes," he said finally. "I think that would be best for Noah." Sarah nodded. "Then I'll see you both at 8 tomorrow morning." As his driver took him downtown, Maxwell found himself thinking not of the upcoming meeting, but of Sarah Collins, with her steady gaze and quiet confidence, the woman who had survived her own tragedy and somehow emerged with the capacity to help his son face his. Perhaps, he thought, watching the city blur past the tinted windows, she could help them both. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah became a fixture in their lives. She arrived each morning at precisely 8, her simple clothes always neat, her manner always calm. Maxwell found himself lingering at home more often, pushing meetings later, coming back earlier. Today, he stood in the doorway of the therapy room, watching Sarah work with Noah on his exercises. Her hands guided Noah's arm through the motion, gentle but firm. "That's it," she encouraged as Noah struggled to grasp a foam ball. Just a little more. Maxwell remembered the first physical therapist they'd hired after coming home from the hospital. The woman had been clinically efficient but treated Noah like a problem to solve rather than a child in pain. Sarah's approach was different. She made each small victory feel important. Noah's fingers closed around the ball. His face lit up. "Excellent work," Sarah said, high-fiving him. "5 more, and we'll take a break." Maxwell stepped into the room. "How's it going today?" Noah turned toward his voice, smiling. Another change. His son now looked for him, expected him, wanted to share his progress. "Dad, watch this." Noah concentrated, gripping the ball and lifting it a few inches before dropping it into a basket. Maxwell felt his throat tighten. 6 months ago, doctors had warned that Noah might never regain fine motor control in his right hand. "That's fantastic, buddy," Maxwell said. "You've been working hard." "Sarah says small steps make big journeys," Noah said through his tablet. "Sarah's right." Maxwell caught her eye over Noah's head. "She usually is." Something flashed across her face, surprise perhaps, before she turned back to Noah. "Ready for your break? Maybe your dad can read with you while I get your snack." As Sarah left the room, Maxwell took her place beside Noah. He picked up the book they'd been reading, a chapter book about a kid detective. Not the kind of literature Maxwell had imagined sharing with his son, but Noah loved it. "Where did we leave off?" he asked, though he remembered exactly. The detective had just found the first clue in the abandoned lighthouse. Noah guided him to the page. Maxwell began to read, doing the different voices that made Noah smile. Another thing Sarah had taught him, that reading could be playful, not just educational. When Sarah returned with Noah's carefully prepared snack, she paused in the doorway, watching them. Maxwell felt her gaze but continued reading, only looking up when Noah laughed at the funny accent he'd given the lighthouse keeper. "You're getting better at the voices," Sarah said, setting down the tray. "I had a good teacher," Maxwell replied. Their eyes met briefly. Something had been growing between them. Not romance exactly, but a connection built on shared concern for Noah, on late evening conversations about his progress, on the gradual lowering of Maxwell's carefully constructed walls. After Noah's snack and afternoon therapy sessions, Maxwell walked Sarah to the elevator as had become their routine. Usually, they discussed Noah's schedule for the next day or any concerns about his care. Today, Maxwell found himself asking something different. "Would you stay for dinner tonight?" Sarah's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Is there something specific about Noah's care you wanted to discuss?" "No," Maxwell admitted. "I just thought it might be nice. For Noah," he added quickly, "to have dinner together." Sarah studied him for a moment. "For Noah," she repeated, her tone neutral. Maxwell nodded, suddenly unsure. "All right," she agreed. "I'll need to make a call first. I had plans with a friend." "Of course, use my office if you need privacy." As Sarah stepped away to make her call, Maxwell wondered what had possessed him to issue the invitation. Their relationship was professional. She was Noah's caregiver, not a family friend. And yet, in some indefinable way, she had become important to them both. Dinner was simple by Maxwell's standards. The chef had prepared Noah's favorite pasta and a more sophisticated version for the adults. They ate at the dining table with Noah positioned between them in his wheelchair. "This is nice," Noah said through his tablet. "Like a family." Maxwell nearly choked on his wine. Sarah's face remained composed, though her cheeks colored slightly. "Families come in many forms," she said diplomatically. "Some are related by blood, others by choice and circumstance." Maxwell wondered where she placed them in that spectrum. Choice? Circumstance. They certainly weren't family, regardless of how comfortable their arrangement had become. After dinner, Sarah helped Noah with his evening routine while Maxwell handled some emails. When he emerged from his office, he found them in Noah's bedroom. Sarah was reading the final chapter of their book, with Noah already in pajamas, positioned in his bed with the supports that kept him comfortable through the night. Maxwell leaned against the doorframe, listening to Sarah's voice rise and fall with the story. Noah's eyes were heavy, fighting sleep to hear the ending. The scene felt so natural, so right, that Maxwell felt a sudden pang for all the bedtimes he'd missed working late, delegating this intimate ritual to hired help. When Noah finally drifted off, Sarah carefully removed his communication tablet from the bed tray and placed it within easy reach on the nightstand. She adjusted his blanket, brushed his hair back from his forehead in a gesture so tender it made Maxwell's chest ache. She turned, startled to find him watching. "He's asleep," she whispered. They stepped into the hallway, and Sarah gently pulled Noah's door halfway closed, enough that they would hear if he needed something, but dark enough for sleep. "He's making remarkable progress," she said as they walked toward the living room. "His grip strength has increased, and he's using more complex sentences on the tablet." "That's because of you," Maxwell said. Sarah shook her head. "It's Noah. He's determined, and he has a father who cares deeply, even if he sometimes struggles to show it." The observation wasn't unkind, just honest in that way Sarah had that made it impossible to be offended. "I'm learning," Maxwell said quietly. "From you. You give me too much credit, and you don't take enough." They reached the elevator. Sarah pressed the call button, then turned to face him. "Thank you for dinner," she said. "It was lovely." "Thank you for staying," Maxwell replied. He hesitated, then added, "And for everything else. For Noah. For helping me see things differently." The elevator arrived with a soft chime. Sarah stepped inside, her eyes still on his. "Good night, Maxwell," she said. "Good night, Sarah." As the doors closed between them, Maxwell realized with sudden clarity that he was in danger of losing his heart to the woman he'd hired to care for his son. 3 days later, everything changed. Maxwell woke to the sound of Noah crying out through the night monitor. He reached the boy's room in seconds, finding his son flushed with fever, his small body rigid with pain. "Something hurts," Noah managed through shallow breaths. "Dad, it hurts." Maxwell called for the night nurse, who appeared almost instantly. Together they determined the pain was coming from Noah's back, near the spinal surgery site. "We need to get him to the hospital," the nurse said, already reaching for the emergency protocol folder. "This could be an infection at the surgical site." Maxwell's world narrowed to a pinpoint of focus. Within 15 minutes they were in the private elevator heading down to the waiting car. Within 20 they were speeding toward the hospital, lights flashing. Within 40, Noah was being examined by the on-call neurosurgeon. Somewhere in the chaos, Maxwell had called Sarah. He couldn't remember doing it, couldn't remember what he'd said, but at 2:17 a.m., she appeared in the hospital waiting room, still in the clothes she'd clearly slept in, her hair pulled back hastily. "What happened?" she asked, her usual composure replaced by genuine concern. Maxwell explained what little they knew, his voice mechanical. Sarah listened, then sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "He's going to be okay," she said with quiet certainty. "You don't know that." "No, I don't, but I know Noah is strong, and I know modern medicine is remarkable." She paused. "And I know his father would move heaven and earth for him." Maxwell stared at his clasped hands. "I was so careful. The best doctors, the best therapists, the best everything, and still, this happens." "This isn't your fault," Sarah said. "Isn't it? If I hadn't been working late that night, if I had been driving instead of the chauffeur, if I had insisted Laura wear her seatbelt." The words spilled out, his deepest fears, his most guarded thoughts. Sarah didn't interrupt or offer empty reassurances. She simply listened. When the doctor finally appeared, they both stood. "Good news," the surgeon said. "It's not an infection at the surgical site. It appears to be muscle spasms and inflammation pressing on the nerve roots. Painful, but treatable without surgery." Maxwell felt his knees weaken with relief. Sarah's hand found his, squeezed once, then let go. "Can we see him?" she asked. The doctor nodded. "He's asking for both of you." Noah lay in the hospital bed, small and pale but no longer in agony. His face brightened when he saw them. Maxwell went immediately to his side, while Sarah hung back slightly. "Hey, buddy," Maxwell said, his voice rough with emotion. "You scared me." "Sorry," Noah said through the hospital's tablet similar to his own. "Doctor says I can go home tomorrow." "That's right," Maxwell confirmed, "and then you'll rest for a few days." Noah's eyes went to Sarah. "Will you still read me stories?" Sarah stepped forward. "Every day, if you want." "Even on Saturday? That's your day off." Sarah glanced at Maxwell, then back to Noah. "Even on Saturday." Later, as Noah slept, Maxwell and Sarah sat in the uncomfortable hospital chairs beside his bed. The night had stretched into morning, sunlight filtering through the blinds. "You should go home," Maxwell said. "Get some proper sleep. I'll call when we're discharged." Sarah shook her head. "I'll stay." Something about her quiet certainty, her unwavering presence when Noah needed her, broke something open in Maxwell. "Why?" he asked. "This isn't in your job description. None of this is—" Sarah looked at him, really looked at him. "Because I care about Noah. Because I understand what it's like to sit in hospital rooms waiting for news. Because no one should have to do this alone." "Even someone like me?" Maxwell asked, the question revealing more vulnerability than he'd intended. "Especially someone like you," Sarah replied softly. "What does that mean?" She studied him for a moment. "Someone who carries too much alone, who thinks they deserve to—" The words hit with uncomfortable accuracy. Maxwell looked away, toward his sleeping son. "After the accident," he said carefully, "I fired everyone who had been in our lives before. The housekeeper Laura loved, Noah's first nanny, even the gardener. I couldn't stand seeing their pity." "It wasn't pity," Sarah said. "It was shared grief." "Maybe, but I didn't want to share it. I wanted to control it, like everything else." "How's that working out for you?" The question held no judgment, just genuine curiosity. Maxwell laughed softly, the sound surprising even him. Not well, apparently. Sarah smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her all night. It transformed her face, showing a glimpse of the woman she might have been before her own tragedy. "For what it's worth," she said, "I think you're doing better than you realize." They sat in comfortable silence until Noah woke again. The doctor arrived with discharge instructions, and by early afternoon, they were heading home in Maxwell's car, Noah drowsy from medication but no longer in pain. Back at the penthouse, Sarah helped settle Noah in his room with fresh clothes and his favorite blanket. Maxwell watched from the doorway as she arranged his pillows just so, making sure his water and tablet were within easy reach. "Sarah," Noah said through his device, his eyes already heavy with approaching sleep. "Yes, Noah? Will you stay with us?" "Not just for work. Forever." Maxwell felt his heart stutter. Sarah's hand stilled momentarily before she recovered. "That's a big question," she said gently, "and one you should rest before discussing." "Dad wants you to stay too," Noah persisted. "He looks at you when you're not watching." Maxwell stepped forward, equal parts mortified and amazed at his son's perception. "Noah, that's enough. Sarah has her own life outside of taking care of us." "But she fits here," Noah insisted, fighting sleep to make his point. "We're better with her." The simple truth of it hung in the air. Sarah's cheeks had flushed pink, but she maintained her composure. "Sleep now," she said to Noah. "We can talk more later." As Noah finally surrendered to exhaustion, they stepped into the hallway. Maxwell ran a hand through his hair, suddenly awkward. "I'm sorry about that," he said. "Kids say whatever comes to mind." "It's okay," Sarah replied. "He's had a rough night. We all have. Still." Sarah looked up at him, her eyes direct as always. "Is he wrong?" The question threw Maxwell off balance. "About what?" "About you wanting me to stay. About looking at me when I'm not watching." Maxwell's carefully constructed world tilted on its axis. The professional boundaries he'd maintained, the emotional walls he'd built, they suddenly seemed paper-thin against the reality of his feelings. No, he admitted finally, he's not wrong. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The admission hung in the air between them, changing everything and nothing all at once. "I should check on Noah," Sarah said finally, her professional demeanor sliding back into place like armor. Maxwell nodded, unable to find the right words. He watched her slip back into Noah's room, the door closing softly behind her. That night, after Sarah had gone home with a promise to return early the next morning, Maxwell sat in his home office, pretending to work while his mind circled the same thoughts. What was he doing? Sarah was Noah's caregiver, not a potential partner. The professional boundaries existed for good reasons. And yet, Noah's words echoed in his head. "We're better with her." It was undeniably true. Since Sarah had entered their lives, the penthouse felt less like a museum and more like a home. Noah was happier, more engaged, making progress that specialists had deemed unlikely. And Maxwell himself had changed, spending more time with his son, learning how to connect, how to be the father Noah needed. The next morning arrived with clarity. Maxwell knew what he needed to do, even if he wasn't entirely sure how to do it. When Sarah arrived, looking rested but cautious, he asked her to join him in the kitchen after she checked on Noah. "How is he?" Maxwell asked when she appeared. "Sleeping peacefully," Sarah reported. "His temperature is normal. The medication seems to be working." Maxwell nodded, then gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, sit down." Sarah sat, her posture straight, hands folded on the table, waiting. "I want to apologize," Maxwell began, "for putting you in an uncomfortable position yesterday." "You didn't." He held up a hand. "Please, let me finish. When Laura died and Noah was injured, I shut everything down. My emotions, my connections to others, everything except work and Noah's care. I told myself I was being practical, focusing on what mattered. But really, I was afraid." Sarah watched him, her expression softening. "Then you came into our lives," he continued. "You weren't intimidated by me. You didn't treat Noah like a project or a tragedy. You just helped, both of us." "That's my job," Sarah said, but her voice carried uncertainty. "No," Maxwell said firmly. "Your job is to care for Noah. You went beyond that. You helped me learn how to be a father again. You showed me that it's okay to laugh, to read silly voices in stories, to just be present without trying to fix everything." He took a deep breath. "What I'm trying to say is that Noah was right. We are better with you. I'm better with you. And if that crosses professional boundaries, then maybe we need to redefine those boundaries." Sarah was silent for so long that Maxwell began to think he'd made a terrible mistake. Then she spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "When Tommy died, I thought my purpose had died with him. Taking care of him had been my whole life. I threw myself into work, moving from family to family, helping children but never letting myself get attached." She looked up, meeting his eyes. "Then I met Noah, and you. At first, it was just another job, but somewhere along the way, it became more. I started to care, not just professionally, but personally, and that scared me." "Why?" Maxwell asked. "Because I know what it's like to lose people you love. Because professional boundaries are safer." She paused. "Because falling for your employer is complicated, especially when there's a child involved." The word falling sent a jolt through Maxwell's chest. "What if," he said carefully, "I wasn't your employer anymore?" Sarah's eyebrows lifted. "Noah needs consistency in his care." "Yes, he does. But there are other qualified caregivers for the times when you and I are—" He hesitated, searching for the right word. "Together." A small smile touched her lips. "Together?" "If that's something you'd want," Maxwell added quickly. Before Sarah could answer, Noah's voice came through the monitor. "Dad? Sarah?" They both stood immediately. The conversation paused, but not forgotten. In Noah's room, they found him awake and alert, looking better than he had in the hospital. "I'm hungry," he announced through his tablet. Sarah smiled. "That's a good sign. What would you like for breakfast?" "Pancakes, with blueberries. And can we eat together? All of us?" Maxwell and Sarah exchanged a look. "Of course," Maxwell said. "I'll help make them." Noah's eyes widened with surprise and delight. "You can cook?" "No," Maxwell admitted, "but I can learn." And so he did. Under Sarah's patient guidance, Maxwell learned to measure flour and milk, to fold in blueberries without crushing them, to flip pancakes with more enthusiasm than skill. Noah watched from his wheelchair at the kitchen island, offering advice and giggles in equal measure. When they finally sat down to eat, the pancakes were misshapen but delicious. Noah beamed at his father. "These are the best pancakes ever." Maxwell knew they weren't. He'd had pancakes prepared by world-class chefs, but these, made with laughter and love in his own kitchen, tasted better than any five-star meal. After breakfast, as Noah rested in the living room, Maxwell and Sarah stood side by side washing dishes. It was such a mundane activity, something Maxwell hadn't done himself in decades, yet it felt significant. "I meant what I said earlier," Maxwell said quietly, handing her a plate to dry, "about not being your employer, about being together." Sarah set down the towel and turned to face him. "I care about Noah, and I care about you, but I need you to be sure this isn't just gratitude or relief after a crisis." "It's not," Maxwell said firmly. "It's about who you are, how you've helped me see what really matters, how you've made us a family when I thought that was impossible after Laura." Sarah studied his face, searching for uncertainty or hesitation. Finding none, she nodded slowly. "Then yes," she said. "I'd like to try being together, but we take it slow for Noah's sake, and we're honest with him every step of the way." Maxwell nodded, a weight lifting from his shoulders. "Agreed." Later that evening, as they sat together in Noah's room reading the next chapter in their ongoing story, Maxwell looked at the two people who had become his world. His son, whose courage and resilience humbled him daily, and Sarah, whose quiet strength had taught him how to open his heart again. Noah caught him looking and smiled knowingly. Maxwell smiled back, unashamed to be caught in this moment of pure happiness. He had spent years building his empire of wealth and influence, but his most valuable treasures were right here in this room. Not the penthouse with its priceless art, not the company with its billions in assets, but this small family they were creating together, bound not by obligation, but by choice. The cold-hearted billionaire was gone, melted away by love disguised as a simple nanny who had walked into his life unafraid and unchanged him forever. For now, that was enough. Don't forget to like this video if you believe in the power of love to break down walls and bridge any divide. Please do comment your feedback and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of family, redemption, and the triumph of love over pride. Remember, it's never too late to change your story.